Thank you, and appreciate the fact that you're tuning into another one of these key learning series with Autism Thought Leaders. And I've just had the good fortune of sitting through a morning of listening to Dr. Jed Baker, and we're going to let Jed talk here in a moment. But first, a little bit of the background. Dr. Jed Baker is a clinical psychologist, and he's the director of the Social Skills Training Project. And I'm going to get right to him at this point. Dr. Baker, let's start with a little bit of background as to what was your first introduction to autism, and if we can segue from that, what is your current focus and what are you hoping to find or resolve?
Sure. Well, I had started doing some work with students with autism back in grad school with Mark Duran and some others who were really teaching us about challenging behaviors was a form of communication. You know, they were trying to tell us something. It was just not behavior to get rid of. We needed to teach them better ways to get their needs met. And then I started out my career really in an inner city setting with really challenging kids. And in that setting, we had kids on the spectrum that were kind of being overlooked. People weren't meeting their needs, weren't helping them with social skills. There were very few groups available, and so we started to try to meet their needs and develop groups and develop social networks for these kids.
How did you get going on figuring out, first off, if somebody has autism, how best to work with them, when to reward them and when to take things away?
Well, I think one of the things that my interest in autism taught me, and the autism literature taught me about working not just with students with autism, but my own children, kids who were having emotional challenges, was that our kids didn't always know how to deal with a challenging situation. The environment wasn't always set up optimally to help them to succeed, and rather than just taking a disciplinarian approach where we're going to react to their behavior, try to get rid of negative behavior with consequences or reward new behaviors, we really wanted to educate kids, teach them how to cope with challenging situations, build their skill repertoire, and that really set me off on a real proactive approach, and I was so much happier doing that than putting out fires all the time. How do we get ahead of this? How do we teach skills? How do we set up successful environments for students? That's our thrust of my work now.
One of the things that's, first off, Dr. Baker is not only an advocate for educators as to how best to work with autism, but he's a pretty prolific author. And there's 3 books to mention in particular: Social Skills Training, Preparing for Life, and the most recent one, which is No More Meltdowns. Could you give us like a short synopsis on each of these 3 and perhaps a little bit as to what somebody would get from those books?
Yeah, well, let me take the last one first. I feel well, No More Meltdowns is really about challenging behaviors and how we handle that. And it all starts with how we handle ourselves as a parent or a professional. We need to be in check of our own feelings if we're going to be able to implement any plan and not just react with anger or out of emotion. And then it's really about how we de-escalate, crisis moments, and better yet, how we get ahead of them. How do we prevent the problems? We need to know the triggers for our students. And when we get ahead of these problems, partly what we're doing is teaching our kids skills. And so some of the other books are about teaching a variety of social skills. Sometimes they're skills to replace challenging behaviors, like how to deal with frustrating work. And sometimes they're just pro-social skills, how to make friends, how to talk with people, how to join in conversation or play. And so both for young kids and then for people transitioning to adulthood, that's what the Preparing for Life book is about.
Okay, and so much of what you've put in your books, if not all of what you've put in your books, has been from firsthand experience?
Oh, absolutely. Not only my own kids, but the kids I've worked with over the years, and I'm still in the schools doing direct service every single day, doing groups, and so we're challenged, and we need to appreciate that this stuff isn't easy to do. You can't be in an ivory tower and just say, well, let's take this theory and apply it here. Our kids are going to challenge us in our own feelings, and we have to deal with ourselves first. And then we have to think about how do I best help this youngster.
So I think it would be pretty easy to see that a lot of this is kind of ongoing. I mean, do you have a website that people could contact you for, like, well, okay, I see the 10 examples you put, but here's number 11. How would you respond in this situation? So is there a website they can check out your work, and
Sure.
how do they contact you?
Sure. SocialSkillsTrainingProject.com. SocialSkillsTrainingProject.com. Lists a lot of where we're doing workshops and some of the resources that we have, describes the services we offer. There's another website that's easier to remember, jedbaker.com. I probably should have set that up as well, and that has some links also to some interesting videos that we have describing and showing some of our work with kids.
Boy, that one video that you showed today about the young man, that he was probably about 14, he looked a little bit like Dustin Hoffman, but his behavior was so representative of Asperger type behavior.
Yeah.
I mean, that was very helpful. Now to the question I really like to ask all the newsmakers, from all the time that you've put in dealing with autism, what would be your 3 greatest learnings?
Yeah, I think one of the things I learned early on was that we can't just kind of react to behavior, we have to be proactive. So learning what triggers students, learning what sets them off, then we can create a good prevention plan. Secondly, I've learned that I used to be, a counselor in schools, and you can't just do a counseling session and send kids off on their way now to apply those skills. We learned that people don't generalize those skills unless you coach them in real situations. And so we have to be out there where they are, at work, in the classroom, wherever they're, to coach them in real situations if they want them to use the skills. And then lastly, socializing is a two-way street, and it's not all about teaching our students on the spectrum somehow to fit in. It's about teaching everybody else to also be more understanding, engaging, sometimes to step up and be good bystanders too and take a protective role. We all have to help each other. We're a family, whether we're in a school or in a work environment, and if we don't all get along, it doesn't work for anybody.
Having had the good fortune of sat through a discussion with Dr. Baker and listening to him talk, I can tell you that if you have time to either spend some time on his website or look at his works, he does present very easy methodologies for you to look at a situation, be able to figure out, for instance, what caused the situation, how did they react, and then how do you respond to it. There's good tools as to how to work through some of these problems so you can walk away with an appropriate solution. Anything else you want to add to that?
Well, I think the implications of all of what we're talking about are, can we increase everybody's understanding of what's going on for a student who's struggling either socially or with some challenging behavior. Through that understanding, we set up a successful environment for them. Without that understanding, I think sometimes we just go head to head in a power struggle, and it doesn't feel good to anybody. So we've got to get ahead of these kinds of things through understanding, through valuing all of our students. We can set up an environment where everyone succeeds.
Excellent. Dr. Baker, thank you for being here.
Thank you very much. Appreciate
And thank you for being a part of the Autism Hangout community.